welcome to Stampscaping 101. I'm really enjoying finishing off my stamp sketches from my composition video. I thought we would do this one since it's done on the silk, white-coated silk Mohawk everyday digital paper that has more of a matte finish than, like, say, a glossy finish. I thought we would do this one in some colored pencils. I'm not very practiced, at doing colored pencils, so it's always good practice to get some repetition in. Let's see, I'm grabbing some pencils. In the color schemes that I'm planning on utilizing on here, I'm just kind of coming up with it on the fly here. Okay, now this is one of those things I, usually recommend to people, be it whatever types of media you happen to be working in, to grab the colors that you kind of associate with the color scheme that you have in mind. Okay, now on this one right here, we can go a lot of different ways. I could make this a nighttime scene and make it really dark and kind of moody, and here these people are out kind of for a midnight swim. But on this one, I think I'm going to keep it kind of light and airy. I like these clouds kind of as is. We'll add a little bit of tone to it and kind of enhance some of the shadow areas, thus kind of bringing out some of the light. And I thought we'd go for kind of a tropical looking warm ocean down here. Now, okay, now here's the thing. A lot of times I've been doing colored pencils or dye-based inks. Now, one of the things you can do just to expedite your process is you to go multimedia. So if there's some kind of color that you're going to get, going to utilize a lot of coverage with, then you might as well just do it with the ink like this, rather than doing all of that with, a certain color of pencil. Okay, it's just going to go so much faster. But it's all up to you. I do think the dye-based inks are a really good base to utilize with something. I think it gives it a little bit of a richer looking tone in the end result, even though the colored pencils are somewhat more opaque than transparent, but it just depends on how much you apply with them. Okay, so on this one right here, we're going to be looking for a couple different light areas. Okay, we have the light source right here, this little area in the sky. And naturally down here on the water surface, I see this area right in here as a really good area to have a reflected light source, thus creating this dialogue between light source and reflected light. Okay, it creates this dynamic right there. Now we do have the lighthouse right there too, and that'll contribute to kind of a lighting direction, but this isn't a nighttime scene, so the lamp, is not going to be on, in the on position. Okay, so this is just some summer sky. It's a very light tone value of blue, okay? And we're just applying it. I'm kind of soaking a piece of paper towel. Let's see here. Better to do it without a crease in there, so let me take that little crease out of that like that. All right. Now, what I'm going to do here is, like I said, in the cloud area, I'm going to kind of reiterate some of the things that are going on in the shadow areas of my cloud design, the cloud cumulus in this case. But do you see how that tone around the edge right here kind of brings a little bit more attention to the lighting over here? It's very subtle because it's a very light blue. Okay, and then what we'll also do over here is we'll add some tone on this side, and when you do that, when you darken some areas with shadow, the areas that remain that are lighter kind of draw the equivalent amount of attention as you removed from the areas that you've covered up. Okay, so you kind of damper, some of the contrasts over here and darken it up, and thus, kind of enhancing the areas that still remain light. So shadow draws attention to the light potentially, as long as you just don't tone everything out and you don't have anything light anymore, okay? And that's what happens sometimes if you tone too much out, okay? Doesn't mean you can't have a dark sky or something like that, if you want to do something strategically to kind of direct the viewer's eyes somewhere else. But in this case, we want that, you know, the sky formations up there and whatnot, the clouds and the billowing clouds and whatnot. But I also want to draw a little bit more attention over there. Okay, so this is some blue. And I'm leaving some of the clouds white. You know, you don't have to go over everything. There's no set formula that you have to abide by, you know, by any means. Okay, now this area and the water down here. Oftentimes when you look over a body of water, the body of water is a little bit darker than the sky. You know, it just depends, you know, what time of day it is, but if it's a daytime type of thing, one of the things you can do, it's the easiest mask in the world. You just go like this with a straight paper towel. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'll kind of hit this horizon area, like that, like so, and we'll bring some of this tone, this hue, into this area down below. And the areas that I retain my lightness with, which will be around those characters, will kind of act like a spotlight effect on them, okay? So I'll darken the areas around them, thus drawing attention to them as the visual kind of landing spots of the scene, okay? It's like you're putting a spotlight on them, okay? So I'm kind of darkening that horizon, but I'm leaving it a little bit light there, you know, like the, you know, shimmering light on the, starting from the horizon. All right, so kind of adding this in. Do you see how light in value this blue is? It's a lighter blue, which is a perfect one to start off your toning with. See this right here? We already have kind of our lighting dialogue going on here between light source and reflected light. All right, now let's see if I can get up into this. If I squeeze this out like that, I can make a more narrow kind of applicator, and we'll go into the lighthouse a bit, like so. Like I said, this, you know, it's not a nighttime scene, so I'm not going to draw too much attention to the lamp up there. It's not going to be illuminated and, you know, shining out over the sea or something like that. Alright, so here I'm just adding a little bit more tone around the perimeters just to kind of frame things off. I'm going to make this sand in here kind of a brownish tinge, but let's bring some of the blue in here just for a little bit of visual continuity. If you just go with only brown in one area and only blue in another area, it can kind of create kind of a separation and a lack of there's a lack of a visual relationship between the two when it's just completely separate color schemes going on with no overlap at all. Okay, so that being said, let's go. I haven't forgot about my colored pencils, but let's go with a few. I really need to clean off my desk, tidy up my desk here pretty soon. All right, where's, oh, here we go. Yep, antique linen. Another very light value as far as that hue goes. So that would be a pretty good one to lay down here in the sandy area. Okay. Some areas I put quite a bit of blue down there, but this will be fine. Laying that down like so. Alright, so see that warmer tinge down there, but it has a little bit of blue in there. Okay. Alright, so we could stop there, and that could be our base layers or whatnot. You know, I mean, you can go on and on with more of that dye-based ink coloring, but let's make it more about some colored pencils, okay? So with the colored pencils here, you know, I mean, I'm roughly going to lay these out going from light to dark, okay? Yeah, it'll be something like that, maybe. If you can't tell what goes in between, you know, in front of another, it's not going to matter. I can definitely tell that one's darker than these. But here's what I like to do. I like to just start off with my lighter tone, okay? And let's just go in here. And I'm taking a very light tone, but I'm using it very lightly, so, you know, I'm just getting a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe a 5% version of this with each kind of pass. So it's just laying down a little bit of color at a time. Colored pencils are really great because I can get in between the spindrift coming off the top of the wave, you know, and the next wave. It's easy to get in there because these are kind of detail-oriented. It's a detail-oriented medium. You know, dye-based inks on an applicator, not so detail-oriented. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of going underneath some of my waves right here, taking into consideration that I do have other darker colors to come, so with the darker colors I won't use them quite as much as the lighter ones. So I do want to get a pretty decent amount of coverage with this one to leave room for the darker colors to come. So in other words, I'm going like this, maybe in an area, okay? But then as you move up, you go like this. See, it's a darker tone to begin with. It's a different hue too. But then you don't use it quite as much as you did previously. You have this transition right here. Let's just skip ahead to this darkest one right here. And you can go like this, and then you transition that. So that's 3 different tones of blue. This is just this blue, just as is, okay? And I can transition like this, you know, going from dark to light just with one ink, okay? Or one pencil. But doesn't this one look so much more rich in, you know, intensity and depth and whatnot, okay? This one looks a little bit more anemic, so that's why we use the 3, okay? Or just multiples. It doesn't have, there isn't a set number, okay? So it's not like, so if you cover up something, you know, with your darker hue value of whatever hue you're working with, you know, it's not a lost cause, okay? These undercolors affect kind of the overall feel, look and feel of a, you know, an area or an image. Okay. All right. So going back to some of this lighter blue here. Let's get some into these splashing waves. Okay, I want them to be kind of light, but maybe not so stark white. Okay. Kind of going in here over some of these clouds, but I want to retain the lightness of some of these clouds that are right next to my light. All right. It's very subtle because I'm laying down a lot of, you know, very light blue in a light blue area, you know, because I already had that base layer of ink already laid down there, so it's not a huge difference here. Let's get a little bit of this color into this spindrift, okay, just so it's not so stark white. All right, now let's move into some of this warmer aquamarine, okay? It's kind of like a turquoise. Yeah, here's the thing about lighting. I'm going to bring some of this into my lighter area, but I'm going to be careful not to just tone it all out, okay? Leaving it kind of a mono value across this whole area, because as long as there's variation, it contributes to a much richer end result, okay? Visual richness. All right. See how that's working? Now, there's shadows in the design, okay? So the things that I'm darkening with this are already in the design. You kind of darken the areas that are already dark, okay? You reiterate it. All right, okay, it's going pretty fast. Let's go to this one again. Copenhagen, okay. It's a cool name for a color. Okay. Lighter colors tend to get a little bit more, or a lot more coverage, okay. Darker tones I kind of reserve for my shadow areas, or the deepest of shadow areas. Sometimes there's more than others. Alright, now have that down in the water. I can add some to my sky as well. Maybe that's too much. This is really applying fast. Maybe I'm just pressing it too hard. I don't know. Let me use a little bit less pressure. This is what I call kind of tipping the edges, which is going to establish somewhat of a vignette type of look in the scene. Okay. Texture there. I have something on my surface there, I guess. Okay. When you're working with colored pencils, it's kind of interesting. Like, when I put my hand down like this, right around this area, I feel a lot of wax. It's that kind of smooth, waxy buildup. Okay, some on the lighthouse, perhaps. Creating a little bit of a shadow in this area. See, the light is coming from this way, so maybe the shadows are coming this way for all objects. I'm going to create a shadow for two people. All right. There's Copenhagen. Alright, and let's see here. Let's move into this sandy area down here, okay? I was going to say, I don't think this one will even show up, but it does. There's just a slight bit of orange tinge to it. It's called light flesh. Okay, sandy area again. Creating a little bit of shadow underneath that little wave rolling in. You can put some on your rocks if you want to. And let's go with this one right here. This is a raw umber. I think burnt umber was always the one that we were using in painting classes in school. Sepia, umber, black and white. What were some of those other standard colors? Don't recall. I do remember those two. Okay, so adding some of this down here in the sandy area, rubbing it a little on there. And here's what I'm going to do too. I'm going to put a little bit of this in this wave, like it's reflecting some of that light into the wave area. All right, those two look like they're having some fun. Let's see. Sometimes, you can see through the waves into the, the sand underneath. I could put a little bit of brown or whatever the color was, the umber in the space right there. All right. So we have some crashing waves and these two people enjoying their process right in there, enjoying the sights and sounds. Let's get my Brilliance Moonlight White, okay? The areas that are light in here, what we're going to do is enhance them, okay? I'm going to start off with a Q-tip right here, and some of my Moonlight White pigment ink, fast drying pigment ink. You don't need a fast drying one in this case, but it'll stick to things like wax a little bit easier than some pigment inks maybe. Okay. Now the areas where I've retained some light, we're going in here and reiterating the light. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of tone where light meets dark. Okay, and it kind of blends everything together a little bit more, and you're introducing this kind of aspect of light into the scene. Down here in the waves, right on top of the crest of the wave, what they call the spindrift, I think, coming off the wave. I'm just kind of enhancing that a little bit. There's, this wave in front of the people. We can put some of that mist right around them. Tends to kind of set them into the scene really nicely. Here's some birds up here. Let's make some of these birds kind of illuminated by the light, okay? Now, what I did was when I stamped them out, I kind of wiped some of those off, but on this one right here, I'm going to really kind of dampen them off quite a bit. So they're going from black to kind of a lighter gray, and that makes those birds seem farther off in the distance. See how they're lighter? Because I put a little bit of pigment ink over the top of them, okay? This is how the pigment ink looks down here, okay? So that kind of mist right in there. Could use a little bit more right in here. Let me show you. Okay, this, ooh, that's a little bit too much. Dampen it off. All right. So anyway, see, this area of the rock was just as dark as this area, okay? But see, you put a little bit of mist down there. And it just kind of integrates the rocks with the surrounding area in a texture. In this case, it's supposed to be, little molecules of, water in the air, so they're being illuminated. Looks like mist or spray or whatever. Okay, here's a little bit more white on a cotton ball. I'm going to put a little bit more down in this area. And I'll put some on the ocean, I think. It's like the oceans has a thin layer of kind of mist coming off of all these kind of waves and white water and whatnot. This area in my clouds that are closest to light, that I've retained light, you can even kind of bring those out into kind of a softer illumination. And it tends to convey a certain mood when you have textural changes, mainly soft, in stamping. Most stamping is all about crisp impressions, crisp applications of color, whatever it might be, etc. But the small aspect, or a large one, I'm doing quite a bit of this right here, it introduces this softer textural element, which is really a key visual language in visual arts. Okay, textural contrasts. Okay, so adding some of this down in the water. There's some kind of this mist on the water. I'll put a little corridor of some of this pigment ink down here too. Kind of creates, really soft illumination on these clouds. I really like it. Okay, so you can do even things like this. Okay, here's this post right here, this fence. Let's put a little bit of kind of illuminated fog and mist on a couple areas of the fence, okay? Now see this fence right here, it looks different than this one right here. Okay? I mean, we can put a little of this on here just to create, so it's not so different, okay? But see that right there? Look at the mood that kind of creates by having a little bit of that lighting on there. And what I mean, lighting, white pigment ink. Like so, okay? All right, so that is that. And let's go into some detailed highlighting or light within this piece in the form of a 0.7 millimeter white paint pen. It's a white acrylic paint pen. It'll write on anything. You know, we've laid down a lot of wax, you know, with the colored pencil, but this will just go right over the top of it. Okay, there's little splashing waves right around my lighthouse right in there. And let's bring in some kind of splashing water coming off the crest of the wave, I think. A lot of these things are already in the design, but again, you're just reiterating it. So don't let it be too much of a mystery. Observe your stamp designs. A lot of the things that you might do to a stamp post-impression is to just kind of reiterate the things that are going on. So if I have a dark area on my stamp design, you can add shadow to it. Or if there's a light area, maybe you add a little bit of highlighting to it. Okay, and let's go and bring in some of these highlights onto my clouds. I won't do too many. I think the clouds already kind of speak for themselves. In this case, you know, they're nice and billowy and light and whatnot. So I'm just going into some of these areas, and on the lightest area of the cloud, kind of adding a few little dots like that, just to bump contrast a little bit more. And it's highlighting too. It's contrast in terms of this is a sharp little dot next to kind of a foggier application of the pigment ink, or those soft billowy clouds in there, you have a little sharp little highlight like that, just to push that contrast within those images. So you can see there's some white in here, but I see I've kept it largely where the white of the paper already is. Let's see if I can get this to focus here. Why aren't you focusing? Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can see some of those dots in here. Subtle, okay, because I've added, you know, white into a very light area, but see that right there? Some of these cloud billows right in here, splashing, you know, water coming off the those rocks. But see, I already have those splashing rocks down there, so you're just reiterating it. Same thing at the Seaside Cove down here. I have these little dots coming off the crest of the wave. I've darkened in a lot of them, but you can still see them a little bit, but see those little dots like that? And then, I mean, it looks pretty crazy when you look at it really close up, but you know what I mean? You don't notice like super fine details like all this, but I think it kind of reads overall in the overall kind of visual mood and finish of a piece. When a piece feels really finished off, you know, there's this completed type of, I don't know, sense when you look at a piece. And I don't know, when you've taken it as far as you think you can take it effectively. Okay, so anyways, this is another stamp sketch hit here using multimedia, but we have our light sources. If you've been watching my videos in sequence or something like that, there's like 5 of you that are doing that. But you'll notice here, let's go from left to right. We have dark, light, kind of dark, light again right in here. You know, this lighthouse and the little area of cloud right here, and then dark again. Let's start from the top. Light, you know, kind of a little bit darker right in here, right? But there's light here and here. I have a little bit of a horizon kind of separation, darkness. And then it goes light down here again. And then kind of a little bit, you know, there's darker elements in here. There's streaks of it. There's striations of light, you know, off the waves and whatnot. But the biggest thing here is you have this oscillation of light and dark going on within the piece. And that adds to your visual variety and richness. And just in terms of coloring your scenes, don't think of things as like an either or. Okay, this one's going to be done colored pencil. This one's going to be done dye-based inks. This one I'm going to be using alcohol inks. Okay, I mean you can do that, but you can also just make use of the strengths of each one and incorporate them together in one piece. In this case, it was just getting a good base layer going of, that lightest of blue, which saves me a lot of time doing the same exact thing with one of the colored pencils. Alcohol inks would be good on here too, You can't get it in certain areas very well with, the dye-based inks. You can use, alcohol ink if it's going to go faster than the colored pencils for you or not. Okay? All right, so anyways, hope you enjoyed the piece. Try some stamp sketches. And all the pieces that you come up with, you have a lot of things to finish off and to approach in whatever manner you want, with whatever media you want, especially when it's on kind of this, white-coated silk here. It's pretty well open to interpretation through any type of media, including the soft mediums like chalks or pastels. Not great, those types of things have, a little bit better abilities on paper with tooth to it. This is a smooth paper, but it can take things like colored pencils, as you can see, much better than, say, something like a full glossy coated. All right, so anyways, fun stuff with some multimedia here for you. Thanks for watching.